Hello students, this is your third video from your second chapter of history, that is from trade to territory. Till now we saw how the British East India Company, they took a small part of India. They captured a small part of India by winning Battle of Plassey and Battle of Buxar. They planned a secret conspiracy against the king, and in this way cunningly they won the war. Now after winning Battle of Buxar, they had the right of Diwani. That means the right to collect revenue or taxes from Bengal, Bihar and Orissa, these were the three main big provinces of India. And now they were able to collect a large sum of money in form of revenue or taxes, and in this way they were able to maintain their trading. But now they were becoming more and more greedy. They did not stop till here. They did not stop till Battle of Buxar. They wanted to expand their rule in India. Now, moving on to next chapter, we'll see how they expanded their rule. They did not fight any of the battle, but cunningly by framing the different kind of policies, they cheated the Indian kings, and in this way they captured or took hold of the different territories of the Indian king. We'll see in the paragraph. Company rule expands. If we analyze the process of annexation of Indian states by the East India Company from 1757 to 1857, certain key aspects emerge. The company rarely launched a direct military attack on an unknown territory. Instead, it used a variety of political, economic, and diplomatic methods to extend its influence before annexing an Indian kingdom. As I told you before, children, that the East India Company, they were not fighting battles against any of the Indian king. Now, what they did, they framed such kind of policy through which they can take over hold of the Indian territory or land from different kings. We'll see in the next paragraph which was the policy. After the Battle of Buxar in 1764, in which the East India Company defeated Mir Qasim, the company appointed resident in Indian states. Okay, now who were these residents? Residents here means they appointed a person who was a king, who used to interfere in the personal matters of the state, and they used to work for the Britishers. They made such kind of policies which would benefit the Britishers, and so they were known as residents. They were political or commercial agents, and their job was to serve and further the interests of the company. Through the residents, the company officials began interfering in the internal affairs of the Indian states. They tried to decide who was to be successor to the throne and who was to be appointed in the administrative post. Now see children, the Britishers, they were not directly interfering in the kingdom, but what they did, they appointed a person who either was in administrative, in any kind of administration, or was appointed as a king by the Britishers. And all these residents, what they did, they interfered the internal affairs. That means they interfered the administration of the kingdom. They also decided now who would become or who would be on the throne after the death of the king. Sometimes the company forced the states into a subsidiary alliance. Now see children, this is the most important, subsidiary alliance system. What is this subsidiary alliance system? According to the terms of this alliance, Indian rulers, they were not allowed to have their independent armed forces. That means the kingdom, in any of the kingdom, the king, they were not supposed to keep their private army forces. What they had to do, compulsory, they had to appoint the East India Company's armed forces, that is the army. They had to maintain the army and had to pay a high amount of salary to the soldiers. And if the king failed to pay the salary to the soldiers or to the army, or if they were not able to give them proper food, clothing, shelter, then the East India Company, what they did, they would snatch away a small part of their kingdom from their own territory. So this was a very cunning policy or system, we can say, which was framed by the Britishers. They were to be protected by the company, but had to pay for the subsidiary forces that the company was supposed to maintain for the purpose of the protection. And if the Indian rulers failed to make the payment, then the part of their territory or land was taken away as penalty. The East India Company, they installed penalty on the Indian king. For example, when Richard Wellesley was Governor General in 1798 till 1805, the Nawab of Awadh was forced to give over half of his territory to the company in 1801. See children, this is very important, you all have to remember. And as he failed to pay for the subsidiary forces, there was a king of Nawab who was not able to give the salary to the army forces, due to which he had to give half of his territory to the East India Company. And in this way, the Britishers, they expanded their rule. In which year? In 1801. And Hyderabad was also forced to cede. Cede means to snatch away their territories on similar grounds. That means same was the case with the Hyderabad also. Now from this we can understand that how cunningly the East India Company or the Britishers, they expanded their territory without fighting battle. Okay, now see children, moving on to next topic, Tipu Sultan, the Tiger of Mysore. Why Tipu Sultan, he was known as Tiger of Mysore? Because there is a small story. It is said that once he went hunting in the forest with his French friend, and there he came face to face with a tiger. Now at that time his gun did not work and his dagger fell to the ground. Now he battled with the tiger unarmed. He did not have any sword or any gun in his hand until he managed to reach down and pick up the dagger. Finally, he was able to kill the tiger in the battle. After this, he came to be known as the Tiger of Mysore. He had the image of the tiger on his flag. Okay, now see Tipu Sultan. The company resorted to direct military confrontation when it saw a threat to its political or economic interests. This can be illustrated with the case of the southern Indian state of Mysore. Now, the British East India Company, they wanted to capture Mysore, which was located in the south of India, as it had a very vast land area. So the Britishers, they wanted to capture whole of that. But during that time, Hyder Ali, who was the father of Tipu Sultan, he ruled on Mysore from 1761 to 1782, and he was a very powerful ruler or very powerful king. See, Mysore had grown in strength under the leadership of powerful rulers like Hyder Ali. Who was Hyder Ali? He was father of Tipu Sultan. and his famous son Tipu Sultan, who ruled from 1782 to 1799, that is after the death of his father. Mysore controlled the profitable trade of the Malabar coast, where the company purchased pepper and cardamom. In 1785, Tipu Sultan stopped the export of sandalwood, pepper and cardamom through the ports of his kingdom, and this allowed local merchants from trading with the company. Now see children, now when Tipu Sultan, Hyder Ali, when he saw that the Britishers, they were keeping an eye on Mysore, they wanted to capture Mysore, he became alert. Hyder Ali, who was the father of Tipu Sultan, and so he started taking strict action. What he did, he stopped the import and export from Mysore. From whom? From the Britishers. He stopped all the trading activities which were undertaken by the Britishers. And second thing, he also stopped his local traders to deal with the Britishers, British merchants. So in this way, he was trying to avoid the East India Company to enter in his territory. He also established a close relationship with the French in India and modernized his army with their help. That means Hyder Ali, what he did, he started maintaining a good relation with French. Why? Because the French, they were equipped with all the modern lethal weapons, and so he also wanted to learn how to use or how to wage a war with the modernized equipped weapons. So Hyder Ali, he dealt with French as they had modern techniques also and modern weapons also of war, and he also appointed many French employees in his army so that he could learn or he could teach his army or soldiers maximum with the modern techniques. The British were furious. Now the Britishers, they became irritated. Why? Because in no way they were able to enter the territory of Mysore. They saw Hyder and Tipu as ambitious, arrogant and dangerous rulers who had to be controlled and crushed. Now the East India Company, what they saw, that Hyder Ali, as he was very powerful king and as he was taking all the precautionary measures to avoid the Britishers, they came to know that how strong and arrogant and dangerous this Hyder Ali was, and the Britishers, they wanted to kill or capture the Mysore as soon as possible. Now see children, 4 wars were fought with Mysore. That is from 1767 to 69. That is in first war 1767 to 69, Tipu Sultan, he was only 16 years of age, but his father involved him in war. Second was from 1780 to 84. Now during this time, Hyder Ali was killed by the East India Company, and in 1782 Tipu Sultan, he became the emperor of Mysore. And the company forces were defeated by Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan in several battles, but in 1792, attacked by the combined forces of the Maratha, the Nizam of Hyderabad and the company, Tipu was forced to sign a treaty with the Britishers, by which 2 of his sons were taken away as hostages. Whose son? Son of Tipu Sultan. That is in the year of 1792, the third battle. And the Britishers painters always liked painting scenes that showed the triumph of British power, as you all can see in this picture. See, I'll show you. As you all can see in this picture, first picture it is given. These are the two sons of Tipu Sultan, and they have taken these children as hostages. And what Tipu Sultan did, he gave 3 crores and nearly 30 lakhs to the Britishers, and after that only the Britishers gave back their son from Madras. Okay, now Tipu Sultan was killed defending his capital Seringapatam. Mysore was placed under the former ruling dynasty of the Vodiyars, and a subsidiary alliance was imposed on the state. Now see children, there was last battle, that is in Srirangpatam, and in this battle Tipu Sultan, he died in 1799 fighting very bravely against the Britishers. But at last he was not able to hold long with the Britishers, and Britishers, they cunningly, as they did in Battle of Buxar, same, they played a game with Tipu Sultan, and cunningly they killed Tipu Sultan. Now Tipu Sultan, after the death of Tipu Sultan, Vodiyars, they were replaced by Tipu Sultan. That means Vodiyars, they were made king in place of Tipu Sultan, and a subsidiary alliance was imposed on the state. Now again the Britishers, they had power on Malabar coast, which made their trading center easy. And as they had appointed the puppet king. Who was the puppet king over here? Wadiyars. They could work according to the orders of the Britishers only. And so they would plan or implement such system which would benefit the Britishers only. See children, here is a map of Mysore. Mysore, it was ruled by Tipu Sultan. Here we can see how how the Britishers, they killed Tipu Sultan and replaced Wadiyar in Mysore. See, you all can see the heading, Anglo-Mysore War. Okay, in 1799, when Tipu Sultan was killed by the Britishers. This was the last war of Tipu Sultan, where he was killed cunningly by the Britishers. Okay, now moving further. Now they were facing a great big problem with Maratha. Now after conquering or after capturing Mysore, now they were moving further and they wanted more to capture in India. So Marathas, if we talk about Marathas, they had 3 main territories, that is Sindhyas, Gaekwad and Holkars. See children, I'll show you in map. In this map you all can see I have written with red pen. See, Sindhyas in the central of India, then below that with red pen I have written Holkars, then on the left, that is in Gujarat, Gaekwad. So these were the 3 different dynasties, which were the 3 main dynasties of Marathas, and all these 3 dynasties, that is Sindhya, Gaekwad and Holkars, they worked under Peshwas. Peshwas means prime ministers. Okay. Now see children, Marathas, they wanted to rule India. As the Britishers, the intention of the Britishers and Marathas, they both were the same. The Britishers, they also wanted to expand, whereas the Marathas, they also wanted to expand their rule in India. And so what they decided to capture Delhi. But as on the other hand, the British company, they also wanted to expand their rule. So they thought that till now they had captured Bengal and Mysore, and now they were becoming more and more greedy and wanted to expand their rule, which were under the Marathas also. That means Scindias, Gaikwad, Holkars. And so they waged a war on Maratha, which is known as Anglo-Maratha War, which we'll see in this paragraph. See children, war with the Marathas. From the late 18th century of the company also sought to curb and eventually, curb means to control, and eventually destroy Maratha power. With their defeat in the Third Battle of Panipat in 1761. Now this Battle of Panipat, it was fought between the Maratha and Afghans. The Marathas' dream of ruling from Delhi was shattered. They were divided into, as the Afghans, they defeated the Marathas. Due to this, their whole of the territory, it was divided into small states, and their dream of ruling Delhi was broken. They were divided into many states under different chief, that is chief, or we can say Sardar, belonging to dynasties such as Scindia, Holkar, Gaikwad and Bhosle, as I showed you in the map. See children, again I will show you Scindia, Holkar, Gaikwad, all these were the dynasties of the Marathas. These chiefs were held together in a confederacy under a Peshwa. That is, confederacy means a union of people. A union of people were there, and it was managed by a minister who became its effective military and administrative head based in Pune. That means all the administrative function, whereas the military function, it was managed by this union of people. Mahatji Scindia and Nana Fadnavis were two famous Maratha soldiers and statesmen of the late 18th century. This is just for your information. Now, in second paragraph, the Marathas were subdued in a series of war. In the first war, that ended in 1782 with the Treaty of the Salbai, there were no clear victor. The second Anglo-Maratha War, that was in 1803-5, was fought on different fronts, resulting in the British gaining Orissa and the territories north of the Yamuna River. See, I'll show you in the map. See, you all can see north Yamuna River, Delhi, Agra, then in the east Orissa. All these territories were won by the East India Company Britishers from the Marathas. Previously, all these regions were included in Maratha. See, the second Anglo-Maratha War, that was in 1803-5, was fought on different fronts, resulting in the British gaining Orissa. You all can see where Orissa is, and the territories are north of the Yamuna River, including Agra. You all can see Agra and Delhi. And finally, the third Anglo-Maratha War of 1817 and till 19, it crushed Maratha power. That means totally Marathas, they were totally suppressed by the East India Company. The Peshwa was removed and sent away to Bitur near Kanpur with a pension. Now the company, they had a complete control over the territories south of Vindhyas. Vindhyas you all can see in the map. All the southern regions of the Vindhyas. All this also the Britishers East India Company captured. So how many territories they captured? See, Gaikwad, Sindhia, Holkars, then Delhi, Agra, Orissa and south of Vindhyas. So whole of this territory was captured by the Britishers. So they expanded their rule over this regions. And in this way they also started expanding their rule. Now see children, next paragraph, the claim to paramountcy. Okay, now we are going to learn something new. It is clear from the above that from the early 19th century the company pursued an aggressive policy of territorial expansion. We have seen that the Britishers they cunningly they expanded their kingdom of India. They started capturing India kingdom. Under Lord Hastings, Governor General from 1813 to 1823, a new policy of paramountcy was initiated. Now see children, what is this policy? Now the company claimed that its authority was paramount or supreme, as they were having hold over more and more regions or more and more territories of India. They started declaring themselves as supreme, and hence its power was greater than that of the Indian states. And so now they started suppressing all the smaller kingdoms. Okay, now we'll move on to the next paragraph, that the claim to paramountcy. Paramountcy means declaring supremacy, the power of supremacy in India. Now the Britishers, as they were having more and more territory in India, so what they did, they started declaring themselves as the superior power. So, it is clear from the above that from the early 19th century the company pursued an aggressive policy of the territorial expansion. Under Lord Hastings, governor who was a governor general from 1813 to 1823, a new policy of paramountcy was initiated. That means was implemented. Now the company claimed that its authority was supreme, paramount or supreme. Hence its power was greater than that of the Indian states. In order to protect its interest, it was justified in annexing or threatening to annex any Indian kingdom. So as they were having hold of large area or large region of India, they considered themselves superior and they started suppressing the smaller kingdoms of India. This view continued to guide later British policies as well. As previously we saw that the Mughals had authority on India, so same was the case over here. Previously we saw that Mughal they got hold on majority part of India. So same was the case with the Britishers also. Now as they were having a hold over big region or big part of India, they also started thinking themselves as superior. Now this process however did not go unchallenged. For example, when the British tried to annex the small state of Kittur, that is in Karnataka, Rani Channamma took to arms and led an anti-British resistance movement. That means the Britishers, when they wanted to annex a small state named Kittur, that is Karnataka in south. During that time Rani Channamma was ruling. So she did not give up. She fought bravely against the Britishers. But she was arrested in 1824 and she died in prison in 1829 as she could not withstand against the superior power of the Britishers. But Rayana, a poor chowkidar of Sangoli in Kittur, who was a chowkidar, who was a poor man, who was a chowkidar of Sangoli in Kittur, he carried on the resistance. With popular support, he destroyed many British camps and records. That means he tried to save the kingdom. He started destroying many British camps and records. He was caught and hanged by the British, but it was not long that he could withstand against the supreme power of the Britishers. So, one day he was caught and hanged by the British in 1830. Now you will read more about several cases of resistance later in this book. Now see children, the Britishers knew that if they have failed in establishing their supremacy in India, then they knew that they will have adverse effect on their import and export, that is their trading business. So they were not only afraid of the Indians but also by the most of the other rulers, as well as they were afraid of the another nation named Russia, which was seen on the upper part, on the northern part of India. If you see in world map, we can see Russia, it is located on the northern part of India. So as Russia at that time, it was very powerful nation. So now they were getting frightened or they were having a threat that Russia would also come with the intention of capturing India, as India was very rich and prosperous nation. Okay, in the late 1830s, the East India Company became worried about Russia. It imagined that Russia might expand across Asia and enter India from the northwest. Driven by this fear, the British now wanted to secure their control over the northwest. And now what they thought that they thought if they want to remain protected from the Russia, what they had to do, they had to capture all the parts that were located in the northwest of India. So what they did, they fought a prolonged war with Afghanistan between 1838 and 1842 and established indirect company rule over there. Now see children, we know where is Afghanistan located. I'll show you in map. Abruptly I have shown. See, in the northwest side, you all can see I have written here Afghanistan. Below Afghanistan is Pakistan. As we were not having enough of space, I have mentioned Afghanistan over here only. Okay. Now Sindh was taken over in 1843. Can you all see children? Sindh in the west above Gujarat. Then next in line was Punjab. Punjab, see children, during that time it was all the area which is now Pakistan. So all that area was also included in Punjab only. I have drawn a line with a pencil. And at present where there is Punjab and Haryana, there were the different states of Punjab. So the Britishers, they captured this Punjab also. But the presence of Maharaja Ranjit Singh held back the company. Maharaja Ranjit Singh, he was a very strong and brave ruler during that time. But after his death in 1839, two prolonged wars were fought with the Sikh kingdom and it was also captured. See, can you all see in the north, Sikh, whole of this region was also captured by the Britishers, and ultimately in 1849 Punjab was annexed. That means the whole of the Punjab or whole of the region of Punjab was captured by the Britishers. Why they captured all this northwest side? Because they were afraid of the nation Russia. They wanted to stop Russia from entering, and so they captured whole of the northwest part of India. Now moving further, the doctrine of lapse. The final wave of annexation occurred under Lord Dalhousie, who was the Governor General from 1848 to 1856. Now Lord Dalhousie, he implemented a policy named Doctrine of Lapse. What was that? That means that if any Indian ruler who died without having a male heir in his kingdom would lapse. That means they would fail to rule on that kingdom, and that part will become the territory of East India Company. See how cunning policies the Britishers they made to expand their rule. One kingdom after another was annexed simply by applying this doctrine. Satara in 1848, Sambalpur in 1850, Udaipur in 1852, Nagpur in 1853 and Jhansi in 1854. Rani Lakshmibai, she fought for her kingdom after his husband's death, but as she could not withstand against the British power, she had to give up. But till the last breath of her life, she fought very bravely against the Britishers. Okay, now moving on to next paragraph. Finally, in 1856, the company also took over Awadh. This time the British had an added argument. They said they were obliged by duty to take over Awadh in order to free the people from the misgovernment of the Nawab. They gave the reason that as the Nawab of Awadh, he was not able to manage the area of Awadh, the region of Awadh, and so they were just trying to make proper management, and this was the reason why they took control over Awadh. So this kind of silly reason they used to give. Enraged by the humiliating way in which the Nawab was deposed, the people of Awadh joined the great revolt that broke out in 1857. And as the people became aware of this silly reason, they knew that the Britishers, they were lying, and so they wanted to drive the Britishers away from their region, and so they joined in 1857 revolt. Now setting up a new administration. Now see children, as the Britishers, now they had a very vast area. That means majority of the area that was covered by or captured by the Britishers. Not only fighting battles they covered the area, but they covered this area by implementing cunning policies. And now there was a big question of management. Now what they had to do, they had to divide all the vast region of India which they had captured for undertaking proper administration. Now we'll see in this paragraph what they did. Warren Hastings, who was a Governor General from 1773 to 1785. Now see children, you all have to remember all this name of the governor, the British governor, and which policies were implemented by them, or which kind of work was done by them. All you all have to remember by heart. Warren Hastings, who was Governor General from 1773 to 1785, was one of the many important figures who played a significant role in expansion of company power. By his time, the company had acquired power not only in Bengal but also in Bombay and Madras also. Now, this three region, Bombay, Madras, and Bengal, this were very vast area. After capturing all these three big provinces, nearly whole of the India was under the British rule. British territories were broadly divided into administrative units called presidency. So what they did, they divided into India into three presidencies, three area, that is Bengal, Madras and Bombay. Each was ruled by a governor and they appointed a government for individual province. The supreme head of the administration was the Governor General. Warren Hastings, the first Governor General, introduced several administrative reforms, notably in the sphere of justice. And now he started implementing different policies for justice also. From 1772, a new system of justice was established. Each district was to have two courts. A criminal court, which was known as Faushdari Adalat, and a civil court, which was known as Diwani Adalat. Now see children, now when any nation is there or in any of the area or region, obviously where people stay together, where people stay in a society, obviously there would be crime. So to control this crime, and to impart justice, what the Britishers they did, they gave each district two kind of court. One was a criminal court which was known as Faushdari Adalat, and second was civil court which was known as criminal court, Diwani Adalat. Now Maulvis and Hindu Pandits interpreted Indian laws for the European district collectors who presided over civil courts. Now the Hindu Pandits as well as the Muslim Maulvis, they were ordered to give some kind of laws or rules from their religion which would help in administration. The criminal courts were still under a Qazi and a Mufti, but under the supervision of the collectors. That means a collector was appointed to control whole of the district. The collector, he had to see that the law and order is maintained in the society, whether the employers they are getting proper salary, whether the people they are behaving in a civilized manner, they are not breaking the laws. So to undertake all this or to see all these activities, a collector was appointed by the East India Company. A major problem was that the Brahmin Pandit gave different interpretation of local laws based on different schools of the Dharma Shastra. That means the Pandit they gave tried to show the Britishers the local laws which was from Dharma Shastra. Now what is Dharma Shastra? It is a Sanskrit text prescribing social rules and codes of behavior which was composed from 500 BC and onwards. In 1775, 11 Pandits were asked to compile a digest of Hindu laws and be Halhed translated this digest into English, and by 1778 a code of Muslim law was also compiled for the benefit of European judges. Under the Regulating Act of 1773, a new Supreme Court was established, while a Court of Appeal, the Sardar Nizamat Adalat, was also set up at Calcutta. Now this is the information. The principal figure in an Indian district was the collector, as I told you before. As the title suggests, his main job was to collect revenue and taxes. What was the main important thing? That he had to collect the revenue and taxes. Second thing, he had to maintain law and order in his district, and with the help of the judges, police officer, and darogas. His office, the collectorate, became the new center of power and patronage that steadily replaced previous holders of authority. Okay, now there was only one person in a single district who would manage all the administration. For example, collection of revenue taxes, maintaining law and order, and with the help of judges and police officer. And who was he? He was collector. Now moving on to next topic, the company army. Now the Britishers, they wanted an army, a huge army who could protect them from the trade rivals and their enemies. So they wanted a well-equipped army, well-forced and trained army who could protect them from their trade enemies as well as the other enemies. For example, Russians, as we saw on previous page. So now colonial rule in India brought in some new ideas of administration and reform, but its power rested on its military strength. Now see children, to protect themselves from the trade rivals and other enemies, what they did, the Britishers, they started appointing the Indian soldiers, and they started giving training to fight against the enemies. The Mughal army was mainly composed of cavalry, that is Savars, means trained soldiers on horseback. Savars we can say. Savars means they were the trained soldiers who sit on horseback and fight a battle on horseback. And infantry, that is pedal foot soldiers who walked on their foot. They were given training in archery, that is bow and arrow, tirandazi, and the use of sword. That means the soldiers, they were given training on how to fight in a battle, either on riding on a horse, or by giving them training in archery, or by walking, how they can fight with sword and gun. The cavalry dominated the army, and the Mughal state did not feel the need to have a large professional trained infantry. The rural areas had a large number of armed peasants, and the local zamindars often supplied the Mughals with pedal soldiers. Now there were only the local people who supplied local peasants. Peasants means farmer. They were the farmers only who were trained as the soldiers to fight against the enemy. But now the Britishers, they wanted a modernized means of technique to fight with their enemies. So a change occurred in 18th century when Mughal successor state like Awadh and Banaras started recruiting peasants into their armies and training them as professional soldiers. The East India Company adopted the same method when it began recruitment for its own army, which came to be known as Sipahi army, or the Indian word Sipahi, which we mean as soldier. A warfare technology changed from 1820. The cavalry requirement of the company army declined. Now the soldiers, the foot soldiers or the Savars were not needed by the Britishers. Why? Because Britishers thought that they needed a modern equipped weapon along with the soldiers. So this is because the British Empire was fighting in Burma, Afghanistan and Egypt, where soldiers were armed with muskets and matchlocks. That means now their enemies had increased from they were not only the Indian rulers or Indian kings, but they were fighting against other nations like Afghanistan, Egypt and Burma, who were well equipped with the modernized equipment, modernized weapon and soldiers. And they were using muskets and matchlocks. Musket means it is a kind of a heavy gun used by soldiers, and matchlock means it is a type of gun in which the powder was ignited by a match and then it was fired. The soldiers of the company's army had to keep pace with changing military requirements, and its infantry regiments now became more important. In the early 19th century, the British began to develop a uniform military culture. The soldiers were increasingly subjected to European style training, drill and discipline that regulated their life far more than before. That means now the Britishers, they were giving a modern training to their soldiers to fight against their enemies. Often this created problems since caste and community feeling were ignored in building a force of professional soldiers. Could individuals so easily give up their caste and religious feelings? Could they see themselves only as soldiers and not as members of communities? That means there were certain things that the Indian soldiers, they were not ready to do. For example, see children, there were cartridges which was made up of cow's meat. So the Indian soldiers, when the soldiers they threw that cartridges, or when they installed that cartridges in gun, what they had to do, they had to just cut that cartridges with their mouth. So Hindus, they considered cow as holy, and so they were not willing to do this thing. They were not willing to cut the cartridges with their mouth, as the cartridges, they were made of cow's meat. And so this kind of problems started coming in between the path of the Britishers. And many of the Indian soldiers and Muslim soldiers, they were not willing to work with the Britishers, and they started opposing the Britishers. What did the sepoys feel? How did they react to the changes in their lives and their identity? That is, their sense of who they were. The revolt of 1857 gives us a glimpse into the world of sepoys. See children, in 1857 revolt, all these soldiers, they also joined this revolt. So there was previously also, as I told you, that in 1857 revolt, there was not a single king, or there was not a single king who was fighting for the India, but there were many different kings who were fighting for their own problems against the Britishers only. So now the conclusion, last paragraph of this chapter. Thus the East India Company was transformed from a trading company to a territorial colonial power. That is, the heading of the chapter is justified here, that how they entered in India with the intention of trading and how they started expanding their rule. At times they fought battle, but how they fought battle? Cunningly. They planned a secret plan against the king and killed the king cunningly. So the arrival of new steam technology in the early 19th century also aided this process. Till then, it would take anywhere between 6 and 8 months to travel to India by sea. Now, steamships reduced the journey time to 3 weeks, enabling more Britishers and their families to come to a far-off country like India. Now, it was very easy to enter India with the new modern techniques as the steamships were introduced. So, it reduced the journey time. By 1857, the company came to exercise direct rule over about 63% of the territory and 78% of the population of the Indian subcontinent. Combined with its indirect influence on the remaining territory and population of the country, the East India Company had virtually the whole of India under its control. And this is how they expanded and took hold of major parts of India. Thank you.